Hello Whovians and welcome to my latest Doctor Who review, where today I review the very first story to star David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, The Christmas Invasion, which is his debut. Woohoo! It is also the 2005 Doctor Who Christmas special. So, there we go. Now, I want to just clear something up because I have gone on record saying that my favourite Doctor is David Tennant, and I stand by that. Now, a lot of you may be wondering, why is my YouTube name Mr. TARDIS 11 if I consider David Tennant as my favourite Doctor? Well, it's no great secret, really. It's just the fact of the matter is, when I decided I was going to start my channel, I just thought Mr. TARDIS 11 sounded good. Really, I mean, Mr. TARDIS 10 doesn't really have the same ring to it. Of course, I will get to my detailed feelings on Matt Smith when I get to his era in the reviews, but rest assured, I do like Matt Smith as the Doctor, but David Tennant has always been my favourite Doctor. Literally, Mr. TARDIS 11, it's just a name. Okay, so, The Christmas Invasion. The basic plot of this is as follows. It's Christmas Eve, and high above London, the alien Sycorax are holding the Earth for ransom. The 10th Doctor must recover from his regeneration in time to save the human race from slavery. So, The Christmas Invasion. I really like this story. It is a great debut for David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. I don't think I would call this the best David Tennant story in the world, but I do really like it. The simple fact of the matter is, David Tennant doesn't actually do very much in the episode. For most of the episode, he's asleep in bed because he's recovering from his regeneration. Because if you remember, in the Parting of the Ways, when he regenerated, he absorbed all the energy of the Time Vortex, and throughout this episode, we see him exert that even when he's asleep. So his body is still kind of in the process of literally rewriting itself, and the adventure is more or less up to Rose and co. to kind of take the lead on this one. But rest assured, when David Tennant does appear at the end, it is spectacular. He makes such a great entrance when they open the TARDIS doors and he's like, "Did you miss me?" And then he starts talking to the leader of the Sycorax, and he's just so funny. David Tennant is just very good, and he's very funny. He plays the Doctor with an English accent, because a lot of you may know, David Tennant is Scottish, and Russell T Davies asked him to lose the accent and do an English accent, because the show is British, so there we go. So the accent is top-notch, and for a long time, I didn't realise until I watched an interview a few years back that David Tennant was actually Scottish, because for years I watched the episode Tooth and Claw, and I thought, okay, he's doing a good Scottish accent, like a really good one, but no, turns out the whole time he was doing English, which I think is funny. But anyway, back to Christmas Invasion. And that final confrontation with the Doctor and the Sycorax leader is awesome, when they have that sword fight, and the Doctor is just totally taking control of the scene, when he's trying to work out who he is. And there's some really funny moments when the guy says, "I demand you tell me who you are." And he's like, "I don't know." Well, I'm the Doctor, I know that, but just beyond that, I just do not know who I am. I literally do not know who I am. Several other jokes as well, like, "Oh, I'm Ginger. I wanted to be Ginger. Look at these people. From the day they arrive, blinking, step into the sun. There is more to see than can ever be seen. More to do that..." Oh, sorry, that's the Lion King. But the point still stands. He's just so funny. You can clearly tell he's been a fan of the show in his youth. And he gives a fantastic performance. And by the end of the story, Rose, I think, has come to accept this new guy who has replaced the Northern bloke, Christopher Eccleston, from the first series. She is very much accepted that this is the new Doctor, and this is an alien who can literally change his face. I guess she's like, well, anything's possible with this man. Speaking of which, I think Billie Piper is great as Rose. She's really kind of at a standstill in this one, because she doesn't have the Doctor to guide her and support her, and she doesn't really know at first if this guy really is the Doctor. So the aftermath of his regeneration really is also as much about Rose coming to terms with it as it is about the Doctor trying to recover as well. But Billie Piper's very good. There are occasions when she does go a bit over the top with the crying, but for the most part, Rose is pretty good. And there's that excellent moment where Rose has to speak on behalf of the human race, which shows just how confident she is now and how much the Doctor has taught her in that first series. And it's really great to see her progression as a character. I also like Jackie and Mickey as well. Jackie, Rose's mum, gets quite a lot to do, and there's that funny moment when she's like, I'm gonna get killed by a Christmas tree! Jackie cracks me up. She's honestly the most underrated character in the Russell T Davies era. She's so funny. And there's also Mickey, who has finally learned to really let Rose go as his girlfriend. He kind of realises that, you know, Rose loves the Doctor, and he's like, you really love him, don't you? And she doesn't say anything, but she kind of just... Yeah, her face says it all. And also, Harriet Jones, the return of Harriet Jones. Yes, it's great to see her. She's now the Prime Minister. And there's that ongoing joke where she keeps holding up her ID, and she's like, Harriet Jones, Prime Minister. And they're like, yes, we know who you are. Even the Sycorax know who she is, which is good. It's a good joke, obviously, but it does kind of wear a bit thin after a while. You would think that the fact that the Doctor isn't really in much of the episode would hurt it, but actually, no, it's good, because it allows us to really feel the stakes of the story, because the Sycorax are very clever in what they're trying to do. They're trying to control the world's population with the blood groups, with the A-positive blood group, and they threaten to kill them by letting them jump off the roofs if the human race don't give in to their demands, which is the awful situation they've been placed in. Harriet Jones has to make those tough decisions of, you know, Torchwood. You know, do we confront Torchwood? Torchwood will become a well, quite a prominent thing in the next series, series 2, and of course she represents the country, so she has to make a decision that will ultimately backfire in one way or the other. And it's also nice to see the inclusion of UNIT as well. Very briefly, UNIT do make a reappearance, and they are working with Harriet Jones, because the Doctor isn't there, to try and fix this. And I like the moment at the end where Harriet Jones makes that choice, and she says, tell them to fire, and they destroy the Sycorax ship after the Doctor says, just leave and go and find somewhere else, because the Earth, it is defended. Because the Doctor made the decision to spare them and let them go if they would just leave the Earth and never return. That's all that he wanted them to do. And he managed to achieve that by winning the sword fight. In the end, Harriet Jones makes the decision to kill the Sycorax, and the Doctor, you know, realizes that, you know, sometimes the human race can be monsters, and they can just kill and just annihilate just because they're too afraid, which brings up an interesting moral argument, really. Like, who really was morally right in that situation? You know, the Sycorax or the Doctor or Harriet Jones? As penance for that, the Doctor decides to bring down Harriet Jones's career, and he says to her assistant, "Don't you think she looks tired?" And then she's stressing out and constantly worrying about what he said, and then later on we see a news report of her, like, everybody questioning her, and she's like, what's everyone talking about? I'm fine, I'm fine, no, I'm fine, look at me, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. We won't see Harriet Jones as the Prime Minister again after this, but it's interesting how the Doctor did that to her for what she did. And of course the ending is very good when we see the Doctor finally trying his new costume, and he wears the brown pinstripe suit and the big long brown coat, the Converse, and obviously his hair is all kind of sticky uppy. And I really like the look of the 10th Doctor's costume. I think it just suits him. It's kind of a mixture of kind of old and new, like the big long coat, kind of an old sort of trench war coat, and the new sort of Converse being like, you know, the modern day, and the suit as well. It just kind of, it makes him look wacky enough. It makes him look kind of alien enough, but it actually somewhat works, you know. It's kind of weird, but the Doctor is weird, and I think it's a look that will go on to suit David Tennant as he continues in the role. But the story itself is actually quite good. It's not the most complicated story in the world, but it doesn't need to be. It's a story that's filled with quite a lot of tension, and you really just see Rose kind of crumbling. She doesn't have the knowledge to know what to do. She doesn't really know if the Doctor's going to wake up or if this guy is the same man, and it's just kind of all falling apart, really. I do like the moment when the Christmas tree attacks Jackie, Rose, and Mickey, and of course I mentioned about Jackie's line already, but yeah, there's several situations where the Doctor is not able to help them, and I think it's good to show that, just as a change of dynamic, you know. Much the same can be said about the pilot fish scene as well in the market, and I think the Sycorax look great. I mean, their design is incredible. The prosthetics look so realistic, and the set of their ship is incredible. It really looks great, and especially when the Doctor and the leader, they did the sword fight, and you see the open space of sort of London, the open skies of London. It does look very good, actually, for 2005. It looks quite impressive. And then, of course, the leader chops the Doctor's hand off, but he manages to grow another one because he's still regenerating. And the leader says, witchcraft, and then he says, Time Lord. And one line which I love from David Tennant is when, after he spares the leader decides to lie to him, and then the Doctor throws the Satsuma on the button, which then releases the part of the ship which sends the Sycorax leader flying down onto the streets. And then the Doctor says, "No second chances. I'm that sort of a man." Instantly, I mean, David Tennant kind of showing a bit of a range here. I mean, obviously, as his era goes on, he will progressively show more range, but it's good to know that he will try to capture every side of this character, which is good. As much as I like Eccleston, I do think Tennant brings us a different kind of edge to the role, and that's very welcoming. And of course, the ending is very nice when the Doctor joins Rose and her family for Christmas dinner, which is not something we've ever seen the Doctor do before. I don't think we've ever had a Christmas special, not since the Feast of Stephen, but I don't really count that because there wasn't much reference to Christmas, and there didn't seem to be much in relation to that because it was part of a, well, kind of technically part of a larger story. But anyway, I also like Murray Gold's soundtrack as well. The music is very good, and it moves very well for 1 hour, and the opening of the Christmas Invasion is pretty awesome when the TARDIS crash lands into the Powell estate. Of course, I did review that little mini-sode Born Again, which had a scene in the TARDIS of the Doctor and Rose when after Tennant first regenerated, which may have been nice to include that as a flashback, but I suppose it wasn't entirely necessary because they did show it on Children in Need and it was kind of teased, so perhaps the scene would have probably felt unnecessary, but it's still a good scene. So, overall, I am going to score the Christmas Invasion. I am going to give it a 10 out of 10. Yeah, I think it's a great way to begin David Tennant's era. What a debut it is. You could argue that maybe he could have done a bit more in the story, but when he's on screen, it is amazing. And it's definitely a great way to sort of build up to the new Doctor. And boy, we're in for quite a ride with the David Tennant era, let me tell you that. So anyway, thank you very much for watching this review of the Christmas Invasion. And next time, we go into David Tennant's first of 3 seasons. Yes, where we review New Earth. So until next time, I'm Mr. Tarnas11. See you soon. Bye for now.